What's up, everybody? Just want to tell you how you can come support the show. Go over to rockfin.com/Truthzilla. We got all kinds of crazy, awesome premium content over there. If you get a membership on Rockfin, you get access to all the premium content on the whole site, all the Sam Tripoli's and Charlie Robinsons, who are dropping awesome stuff too. Ricky Varandas, Rockfin.com.
Jamie Deluxe.
I was just about to say him. Great minds.
Okay. Yeah, Sam Tripoli, so head over to Rockfin, you guys. If you're not on the Rockfin train, I don't know what you're doing, man. Another great way is on Patreon. We're just trying to build up our Patreon membership right now. We got premium content going on over there. And of course, please go get yourself a Truthzilla t-shirt, truthzilla.org/shirts. We got some new designs up there. If you haven't seen them yet, or it's been a while since you've been on the shop, go check them out because they probably won't be there long. Once Teespring finds out, they're going to freak out. And they're going to delete our shit. So go get one now. Also, I keep meaning to do this. We're on Telegram, you guys. So if you follow us on Instagram, Twitter, I just got a message today saying, hey, I shared one of your things on our story and it immediately got shadow banned. All the views dropped off. So we were getting shadow banned so hard. If you want non-curated, algorithm-free, direct downloads directly from Truthzilla, we're over on Telegram, and it's at Truthzilla Pod. So come drop in on there. And you can join in the conversation too. So
I want to direct him to Josiah's paper.
Josiah's paper is the COVID-19 A Counter Argument by Josiah Pensado. It's on our website, truthzilla.org/debunked. If you got a coworker, a friend, a relative, anybody who's saying, well, the vaccine science is settled, just be like, oh yeah, check this out. Send them to truthzilla.org/debunked and just smack them in the face with it. There you go.
But gently and with love.
Gently and with love, all right? So anyway, you guys, enjoy the show.
Welcome to Truthzilla. I am Megan, sitting here with Scott and Ed, and our good friend Tina. Ed?
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. We have a very special guest, Nancy Guberti. Did I pronounce it right?
You did.
Oh, wow. Good job. First time. Wow. Sam Tripoli would be proud here. So, and so you are ex-Goldman Sachs executive, and now you're a functional health practitioner. Did I say it right there? I'm sure I messed that up. So
it's fine.
Sure. So, I'm sure there's a whole story there, and I think that's probably a great place to start. Health has been a big part of our journey since we've kind of gotten on the truth train. We've said, it's just all. I mean, at first it was just vaccines. We were learning how toxic vaccines were, and then it's our food, and now we're learning our air, our water, our everything's poisoned, right? But I'd love to hear your story, how you got to be where you are today.
Okay, so I was in brokerage for 15 years, and I absolutely loved it because my dad was retired, so he watched my little boys, and I would come home to cooked meals. It was just great, and I was a vice president in the fixed income division. And what I did was analyze the businesses that worked with Goldman Sachs, increased revenues by offering a technological solution, because I'm really a nerd at heart. I'm a programmer in my first life. And I would travel to 150 institutional clients in the US, loved it. And I had 2 boys, great husband, 2 kids, and my youngest son started to really deteriorate. He was 9'4" at birth, all natural birth. And I'm like, a year in, he's really bad. And they're like, he has a liver disorder. Every 6 weeks, he's expelling his bile because his liver can't handle it. He looks like a disaster. Eczema it's just an easy name. He did not have that. I don't know what he had, but he was when old timers would see little kids, they would all be like, oh, how cute. They'd see my son, they would be like, ah, and run. That's how bad he was. So inside and out, he was a disaster. And the doctors had no answers. So now I'm working these crazy hours, and I'm going to these specialized children's hospitals. And I was like, what are you talking about? How did this happen? What could we do? And they're like, oh no, we don't know. And I just couldn't take that.
Yeah.
So I went and got my master's while I was still at work, and I went for nutrition. I wanted to understand the components of what we eat, like an apple is malic acid and a banana is part of the histamine family. What does that do to the body? And what does that do to the liver? So I went in there first with nutrition, and then I went further into functional medicine, because there's a realm there. There's an Institute of Functional Medicine, and they use specialized tests. And I ran these specialized tests on him and gained insight and put me on a journey that I could not go backwards, And so I left Goldman really to hope to save him. I mean, look, I was praying to God and rowing to shore. Like, I'm always like, pray to God, but you got to row your butt to shore. You can't just stay there in the drowning boat and say, oh, God's going to save me. You got to do something. And that's really what I did for so many years. And then fast forward, I would say nothing short of a miracle. He runs marathons. He just qualified for the Boston Marathon. He got scholarships to his prep school, his college. And I'm like if I didn't step in, and I don't take the credit, something was guiding me, because I couldn't take this no answer from conventional medicine. And from that, I found a whole different bureaucracy. I thought brokerage had issues. I was opened up to the world of medical issues, like insane cover up. You can't run these tests in certain states. You can't find out your vitamin C level. Are you kidding me? So that brought me into there was no turning back. So, and that's how I'm here. That was my journey.
That's
in
incredible.
The short.
That's incredible. And, one of the conversations that we had, we were in the Union of the Unwanted together, and we started talking about raising children in the world we live in, right? And that immediately I knew I wanted to get you on the show because, my children have had similar journeys, really, and that's why I brought their mother on today, Tina, as well, because I thought we could kind of get into it. Recently, my son's been suffering from eczema, for quite a while, right? But I think this started with his vaccines, and this is just one of those things that happened from his vaccine. We stopped vaccinating at was it 9 months?
For Johnny?
Yeah, 9 months. But we're still, we've been on a journey to heal him ever since, right? But he has this bad eczema, and so I took him to a dermatologist, a Western medicine dermatologist, and they're giving a steroid cream, and I'm trying to ask, well, what's causing it? What's causing this? And I'm getting nowhere. There, some kids just have this. This is just a thing. And to be fair to how they look at the world, that's true, right? Like that's how they see it. They see the kids just have these reactions to vaccines. They're just part of growing up now. Like so many of these autoimmune diseases are just normal. So I didn't stand for that answer. And so we got a naturopath and we took him and we got some blood work done. And he's got allergies to gluten, dairy, and garlic. Garlic surprised me, right? Gluten and dairy, we kind of knew that there's issues with both of those in a lot of children, right? So so we're on a new journey, and we're trying to do things differently there and improving on his health. But our journey with his health has been, it's ongoing, right? It's ongoing. It's always and it is difficult. I will say, with it's one thing to switch how you eat. It's more difficult with my kids, I find. So yeah.
So let's unpack that a second.
Sure, yeah, let's do it.
First, the whole eczema. Yeah. Eczema is an autoimmune disorder, right? So eczema is dermatitis.
Sure.
And so I don't care if you have dermatitis, sinusitis, uveitis, doesn't matter, right? Everything ends with an itis, means inflammation.
Yes.
It starts in the gut. So there is scientific research that shows the gut-brain connection, right? So for anyone with eczema, you look at the gut. And specifically, this is where I love an organic acid test because it's the first morning urine test. It's non-invasive. You can get urine from anybody, okay? Even if they're not potty trained, they have those special bags. You put it around their private parts and then put the diaper on. You collect the urine. It's going to check if there's Candida, Aspergillus, which is a mold. It's going to check Clostridia. Oh, no way could a kid have Clostridia. Depends, vaginal birth, C-section. It depends if they put something in their mouth that had something with Clostridia. All of those are a big problem. And then you have to look at the beneficial bacteria, the acidophilus and the bifidus. But if you have aspergillus, you can't take acidophilus. So here you're giving a probiotic, you think you're doing the right thing, you could be feeding the problem.
Wow.
So that's one thing. The second thing is the immune system is located where? On the gut. The next thing with the gut is, did you know, I mean, I find this also fascinating, 95% of your serotonin is manufactured by your beneficial bacteria in your gut. So now serotonin, we know, is a neurotransmitter. We need that to reach our milestones. It's great for our adrenal system. But when we see someone with low serotonin, there's always food intolerances. So now you're like, was it the chicken or the egg? The gluten and dairy, those cause inflammation. They're really foods that are a waste to put in your mouth.
Yes.
I don't care for adults. I don't care if they're organic. First of all, we're not calves. We don't, have the stomach of a cow. Let them have their milk.
Right.
And then people will say, oh, I hear camel milk. I'm like, camel milk? I mean, that just sounds so disgusting. But I'm like, whatever. I don't judge. I'm just like, why are we going with the camel milk? So the milk is a problem because of the casein. And it's a neuropeptide. So beyond the eczema, the body's giving you a sign. I can't break this down. But if I can't break down casein and I can't break down gluten, those are neuropeptides that travel through the blood-brain barrier. We see this with kids on the spectrum. We see this with dementia and Alzheimer's. So right there, if those things could cause a problem, why put them in the body, right? Eliminate them. The garlic is interesting because it's a sulfur. So lots of kids that have eczema have a sulfation issue, and that's a methylation issue. And that could be because of a special gene. Irregardless, you have to work on the gut and give digestive enzymes and really raise the alpha glutaric acid to help with the sulfur. So you could push that aside for now and just work on beneficial bacteria. Claire Labs is by far my favorite probiotic. And for children, for infants, for adults, there's so many different versions of that, and digestive enzymes. So you want to help to break down the foods and absorb them, and then boosting the immune system. Vitamin C, but from tapioca, not the regular vitamin C, because it's going to be from corn. And then we talk about your food. If it's not organic, and I know it could be hard to always get organic. If it's not organic, it's going to be loaded with glyphosate.
Yeah.
And what's the problem with that? What does glyphosate destroy? Beneficial bacteria and serotonin.
Yeah, it's terrible stuff. Yeah.
I always thought that, and so this is just maybe the conspiratorial mind, but to me, it just seems like if they wanted to come up with a delivery system to give us the real toxins, they'd put it in food that they market as organic, right? I mean, that's how diabolical they are. Has that ever crossed your mind?
I mean, they are. It's getting really bad. When I found out that Gates is the largest owner of farmland, so my husband actually works in the meat market in Hunts Point, and so all the food coming through the tri-state area and going out to restaurants and going out to supermarkets and going out anywhere, across, have to come in here. And there's so many trucks that come in from all over the US, right? So I was very perplexed about okay, so this man is behind the Impossible meat, which is pure garbage. I mean, if you're going to eat meat, go for grass-fed, grass-finished, because you're getting the best fatty acids for the brain. So I was discussing with him and saying, why is he doing that? And he's like, I'll tell you why. If he's the Impossible Burger guy, he's going to take the land so you don't have anything for the cows to graze. And now I never thought of it that way. I thought he would raise all of the non-GMO the GMO foods with the glyphosate and destroy everything. But maybe he's holding it back, never to farm, but to not let you have the cattle to have free enough land to graze on. Who knows? He's evil.
I think
Yeah,
I think we're
totally.
going to the Soylent Green eventually here. So it
I
feels
know.
like, right? It's what it feels like. So, yeah.
It's not good, but the propaganda is so bad. Like I talked about vitamin C in a YouTube video, and because liposomal vitamin C, everybody talks about that. And I'm like, listen, for all the research that we've ever done on parasites, and even for the last virus, you don't want that vitamin C. You want the water soluble vitamin C because that can actually feed the parasite, the lipid. And that could actually feed and replicate the virus. So you don't want that. And that video got taken down. I was like, this is crazy. Like you can't even share information. Yeah. But podcast, you kind of like, they're not listening to podcast. It's harder to do. Yeah. I
think that they're just upset. Like the RSS feed, I think it's a real simple syndication is what these podcasts go out on. It's just a protocol. It's an internet protocol. They would have to find some way to literally like destroy an entire internet protocol in order to censor us. Also, well, I mean, you have like the iTunes, Spotify, like they as a platform can choose not to host a certain, but you can always go get the direct RSS feed directly. Like I can go get the InfoWars RSS feed and just play it wherever I want. You know what I mean? So it's just like it's this last final frontier. But I'm sure they're working diligently. I mean, I've seen articles recently where they've said that like, this is the last. What is it? Just like white supremacists are just proliferating everywhere on podcasts. It's just like, you know what I mean? Like, something like that, right? I can't remember the particular article.
QAnon, right?
Yeah, QAnon is all over the podcast platform. But, and I know that there's some innovation happening as far as that goes, like podcasting 2.0, like Adam Curry with the No Agenda podcast. I know they're working on additional, even more secure kind of blockchain-based protocols. So hopefully, we have something, going forward. But yeah, man, like, so have you experienced? So it sounds like you've been targeted for destruction on all the other platforms. What's that been like in your world? I know we've kind of had like our first couple strikes. We had 2 in 1 week. One of them was one of our very first episodes. They came at us and said, "Oh, this episode from like 7-8 months ago is no longer acceptable," and they took it down. And then we posted an episode that just deconstructed the entire COVID narrative from top to bottom, every single aspect of it. And that was taken down in about 6 hours. So,
bet.
But what type of censorship have you been experiencing this whole time?
So with the YouTube, the videos, they get taken down. Certain tweets would get taken down. Facebook, I don't even bother doing that anymore. So I purchased my own server and I created a password protected membership site. Nice. And I do all presentations through there. Wow. So I'm like, I'll get around it. Again, that's like the technical, nerdy part of me. I'm like, really? Awesome. Okay, we'll find a way. Because it's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
I also have to worry when people come in and ask about testing and I don't know them. So I don't do any advertising, so I want to know who you are. And when it sounds sometimes it sounds like it's like they're trying to catch me in something like, oh, do you have a COVID solution or do you have this? I don't even answer them.
Wow.
And I'm like, if you really want to know, you'll call. There's my business number. You won't just leave an email. So I'm not putting anything in writing. But this is the world, this is how we have to live. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And then if I'm, even for my own clients, when, I've been seeing 9 and 14-year-olds being put on antidepressants because they have gut brain issues. Okay. The pandemic put them under a lot of stress. And now there's separation issues because schools were closed, then schools were open, and then kids are, especially in middle school, high school, I don't know what happens to these kids, but especially a lot of girls, they get really nasty. And they have been put on lots of antidepressants. And luckily, I had one psychiatrist who called, maybe because she was from India, so she was more open. And she's like, I really like your protocol and your testing. She goes, because I keep raising the dosage for these little kids and it's not working. I'm like, of course it's not working. It's a bandage. You just want to numb them. You're making them really numb.
Yeah.
It's very sad.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible.
I mean, that's just the nature of the Western medicine in general, right? It's just all symptom management. It's just a Band-Aid. And there's no emphasis at all on going back and solving the root of the problem, including what we're seeing with COVID too. It's literally it's Pretty insane. And it's all profit driven, obviously, right? You know?
All profit driven.
Yeah.
Honestly, I dealt with so many people and we kept them all out of the hospital. And they were varying degrees of how they got it. So I will say this, if they were overweight, they were more vulnerable.
Yes.
If they were anemic, they were very vulnerable. If they were on blood pressure medication, they were bad. If they were vaping or smoking, those might, and it didn't matter. Like I saw them from 2 all the way up till 80. Didn't matter. The youngest kid I dealt with was a 2-year-old. And then families would get it. And honestly, the anxiety of watching like the death toll and everything, I was like, turn off the TV, because now they're puking from anxiety and they keep calling like, am I going to die? I'm like, look, I have your test results. You're on the right stuff. Literally, my husband and I were driving to everybody's house and dropping off all different homeopathic remedies, nutraceuticals, all different things. And it all worked. I can't like go out and write a blog like, hey, this all worked. Because that's considered, I guess, therapeutic, which was awful what happened with the therapy. There are therapeutics that work. Yeah. And I basically treated this honestly like a virus and parasite. Yeah. Because there was biofilm, and I only see biofilm with a parasite. So the biofilm goes in the blood and thickens it. And now if your red blood cells are getting sticky and thick, the oxygen can't travel. So now you have the breathing issues. And and that's how it was replicating, and it was leaving this biofilm. So the remedies that I used were not only for viral, but it was to get rid of the biofilm. And we keep them on the protocol even for 6 months after. Otherwise, you see that people will get inflammatory issues afterwards. Why? So that's what we did with the people who actually had COVID. Now I have individuals who, for some reason, and again, I always say it's a non-judgment zone, they want to do the vaccine. And I say, okay, find out, is it Pfizer? Is it Moderna? Before Johnson & Johnson came, and I gave the whole presentation. I said, you know, it contains PEG. You know, it passes the blood-brain barrier. This is going to affect you mentally as well as physically. And who did it because they were a teacher getting pressure? Who did it because whatever, you know, all different reasons. And we put them on a protocol pre-post after the first and pre-post after the second. And they fared much better than now. I could look at the data of the individuals who didn't do that, and they're getting type 3 hypertension now for the first time in their life. And there's no coincidences. I'm like, did your food change? Did this change it? No. And that's scary because they're like, oh, what can we do? And I'm like, oh, great. I mean, you put it in your body, you know, like I feel so bad. Yeah. But they've done it. And I'm like, give it 6 months to a year. You're going to start to see people get conditions that they were never going to get ever.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, I mean, we talk a lot about, you know, we have a history of trying to make coronavirus vaccines before this coronavirus.
mRNA specifically.
Yeah. So there was 17 years where they were trying to make the coronavirus vaccine
the old school
the first
version,
SARS.
Right?
But I think that they kind of do the same thing. What we found is the immunity enhancement or pathogenic priming, you know. So I think the jury's still out on what's going to happen. You know, we don't know what happens. Like this, you are the subject of this test study at this point. So we don't know if we could have, you know, mass problems from this vaccine. I mean, we already are seeing some problems, but
we are. Yeah. And they already said, Pfizer said that every 12 months you'll need a booster. And I'm like, how about this? Go take antibodies. And if you have the antibodies, like that's what I tell when we do little kids and the kids. So New York and Connecticut, all these states are losing the religious exemption. So then it was a big push to get all of these vaccines. Thank God they aged out of some, the younger kids. But there are several of them. I said, ask your pediatrician which ones he could run titers on.
Yes.
I mean, brilliant. Run the titer. Then you have immunity. That's all the state needs. You don't need to get the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, right? Yes. And then how about this? Let's not let the kid have pain. Ask him for numbing cream and put it on both arms and tell him, you put it here or here. Which arm are we doing? And we rotate. One time this arm, one time that arm. The numbing cream, the kids don't feel a thing. Why do they have to have pain if they must get it? Me personally, I homeschool would be my way if my kids were young again, because
absolutely
there should not be that you're forced. Because if you're forced and you're going to start doing these, what about, especially for girls, you're going to do Gardasil? Do you know how many people I'm seeing negatively affected? Meniere's disease, guys and girls, they're giving it to guys. I mean, come on. This is so bad. It's made on aspergillus, and every single one that I've tested who got that shot loaded with aspergillus.
Well, this is a good transition because I think that this is kind of one of the main areas I kind of wanted to touch on is raising kids in this world. And, and for us, and I mean, all of us sitting here really with kids, we have kids who've had reactions to vaccines, right? So, here in Oregon, every state across the country right now, every legislative season, there's a new bill where they're trying to mandate vaccines for children. And this is separate from the COVID vaccine, right? Just before the COVID, this was happening. And, Oregon's this year, and it sounds like it might not go through just because they're working on all the COVID stuff right now. But the one they're trying to push through would make it mandatory. Even if you homeschooled your kids, you would have to get vaccines. So they're just pushing harder and harder to the point where we're looking at possibly moving out of the state. Because, this does seem to be, I would like it to not be as political as it is, but it's kind of a left-right thing, right? If you're in one of these left states, like here you are, here's what you get, right? And so we're looking at red states.
This is the beginning of our little community here.
That's good. Let me know where you're going.
Absolutely.
We need a backup because, they already said 2025 is the next pandemic and it's going to be more deadly. So who says that? John Hopkins. John Hopkins funded by Gates. Now, Gates says there is going to be the next one and it is going to be more deadly. Then I read that the Army is already starting to experiment with the next corona vaccine for the next pandemic. I'm like, how do they know what's going to be in it? Because they're going to plan it again. They're going to create it in the lab. That's how they make it. You can't get this type of viral thing that also creates biofilm all by itself. You can't.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and I mean,
So you're looking for states. Are you looking for someplace warm?
Yes. Yes. 100%.
I have a job interview in Texas. So, we're looking at Texas, we're looking at, one of the things I'm running into though, is just because these states have, fought back against the mask mandates and things like that. A lot of them still, like the corporations are still mandating masks. And like a big important thing to us is, if we're going to go to a state and if we're possibly looking at public school, we're still weighing out these options, but these schools are still masking kids. And that's just like there's no way we're doing that. We're against that, right? Like we're trying to raise kids in a world that they're outside of the new world order world. We want them to have normal childhoods, to experience life and to breathe the air and so it's a tough time to raise kids. I mean, I guess
it's very tough. It's very tough. I mean, the masks are ridiculous. And the problem with the mask, especially, God forbid, the kids that are not talking yet, they have to look at a person's mouth. That's how you do speech therapy. Yes. And that's how if the kid had apraxia, you have to show him how to move the lips, he or she. I'm like, and now they're not going to pick up on expressions. This is awful. And, like in my area, I see these little kids, the parents all got vaccinated. They wore 2 masks for 2 months. And now they sometimes wear their mask, sometimes don't, but they masked all their kids because they're not vaccinated. I'm like, they're 2, they're 4. It's insane. And so even if you go to a red state, I think you have to check what part of that state. So one of my brothers lives in Arizona. So it depends on what part, Right. And then, to me, Florida is looking pretty good. I'm not into too humidity or bugs. But they're all over. You got to take the good and the bad, right? Sure. Yeah. And I'm just let's see, because who's going to win? And right now it's looking good. Yeah. But I sure don't want to be in New York the next pandemic. I got like Killer Como here. So it's a problem. And he already passed the bill that he could come into your house, and if he thinks you're a threat, take you out. Where's he going to put you? What's he going to do to you? You know, it's really
terrifying.
It's really bad. The new normal is not normal, and it's not going away. So like, why are the masks still around in the majority of the places? And they actually pitted people against each other. It reminds me of the Avengers, where the Avengers were doing good for the world. And then all of a sudden, somehow that bad guy got them to pit against each other. I keep telling my sons, because I had to go see all those movies when they were younger. I'm like, this reminds me of that. What was it, Captain America or something, when they were fighting, or Civil War, when they were fighting against each other? That's what they created here in the United States. And now the whole black-white thing, I love you no matter what color you are, okay? What is, this is gone wrong. Charles Barkley, I think he's the basketball player, he said it the best. He's like, black and white people like each other. It's the politicians creating all this. I was like, God bless him to say that. Like, no one else is saying it. If you say it, you lose your friggin' Twitter account or whatever, you know? It's bad. And then how do you raise kids that don't, like, if you do go into the public school system, how do you raise them that they don't get brainwashed, right? So like when my kids were in school, in the elementary schools, they were not brainwashing them then. But I will say this, my oldest son is like, the university, and it was a Jesuit school. He's like, Ma, that place. It goes, if I didn't start something, I would leave. You know, like, I started it, it's in my nature to end it, right? To finish. These professors are horrible. All they talk about are how bad Republicans are. And I'm like, you don't even need to be a Republican or a Democrat. You just want to be for the betterment of humanity. When Trump won, they dragged the flag on the floor through the cafeteria. And now my dad was in World War II. That didn't sit well with me, because I was like, are you kidding? The head guy at the school sent out an email saying, we're setting up counseling booths for all the students to discuss their feelings. What?
I read that article. You guys were that school. Okay, no, I'm just kidding. Yeah, no. Wow. Yeah.
Oh my
exactly.
God,
it was Fordham University did it. I'll tell you that much. You know, so it's like you have to watch the schools. You have to watch where are these professors? What's their philosophy? You know, and then so what we fuel a child's body with, not only food, but their thoughts. You know, like I would always say, what you listen to. What music you listen to, you know, if you're listening to, and you know, if you're listening to music that says like it's negative about the person, negative about the world, you know, talking about killing, raping, that's great. You're going to listen to that. What does that become? Like, what games do you play? Who do you surround yourself with? We're the average of the 5 people we're with, you know, so like I started my kids at a young age talking like that. And, you know, what do you want to do? What passions do you have? So like when they were 9, they started blogs. So we're in New York. One kid is a Red Sox fan. So, okay, he wrote a blog to connect with other Boston people. The other one was a Met fan. I mean, it's not good to be a Met fan here because the Yankees always win. So I'm like, okay, so that's how they started with baseball. Then they went into other things, you know, who wrote books, who took this interest. And I would be like, okay, so it's not conventional, but it's good. Like you're expressing yourself. Then they actually in high school started a nonprofit, and they ran a program at Fordham University to underprivileged kids. And let me tell you something, when those kids came in, I was scared. I was like, oh my God, are we like, where did you get these kids from? They were scary. They scared me. And they would go to these areas in the Bronx and offer scholarships to this program. And it was a 4-day program that taught them how to find their passion, how to turn their passion into products, how to promote themselves, and how to propel their future. And I can't tell you, the toughest kids came in on the 4th day. They were hugging everybody, saying like, you know, whose father was in jail, whose father was dead, you know, whose mother they was with 3 different people, whatever, you know, like all these different backgrounds. And here's my kids, white as white, okay, talking to these kids and saying, you took your time and didn't charge us anything, and you believed in us more than our family. So I was like, I don't believe all this racism stuff. Like, if you get down to it, everyone just wants to be loved.
That's it.
You know, in a nice, kind way, and respected.
Yeah.
So like, that was a whole different area. Like, I would never have done what they did. So for parents, I would say nurture in a loving way. What do they like? And really then get into it. Like, oh, if they like this, find books on it, find training programs on it, and, you know, get them involved, and then perhaps ask them to write about it or draw about it. How can they express themselves? Use their right side and their left side of the brain. So use the logic and the creativity, and then see where that takes you. You know, and they could start a podcast. They could start a YouTube channel. They could write a book. You could do anything. There's something called, I think it's Shapeways. And because my kids, this was part of the program. Like, if someone drew a little dog, or they created something, they could go through Shapeways and then have an end product. You know, so like, have your kid think of something and then see it all the way. And they created something. And perhaps then you could even show them how to be entrepreneurial and how they could make money and give half to a charity. Like I always say, raising achievers, but raising givers.
Yeah, that's great. Wow. That's fantastic. Speaking of podcasters, now your son was a podcaster, right?
Yeah, he still is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tell us about that. Yeah, that's a great story.
Let's hear that story.
So his podcast is called Breakthrough Success. Yeah, I'm looking Breakthrough Success. And I think he has like 600 episodes. He started when he was in high school, and he was reading all these books. And one of his favorite persons was Seth Godin, who's a marketer. And he was actually in Irvington. So my son would write emails to all these people that he thought were really cool to interview. And, you know, he would say, I think, I have no idea. Maybe he was very young. I think he was maybe 12. And he would say, hey, I'm a 12-year-old, whatever. And I really like your book. And I read this ABC. And I'm doing this podcast. And I would love for you to share your story. And he said, Mom, that was so educational, even better than school. You know, that first he was going to school for marketing. And he switched to finance because he's like, I need to learn something, you know, like marketing, they were still on billboards. So he said, you ask questions and these people will tell you how they did it. And you could get these golden nuggets from every single one. Yes. And then he then applied to speak on podcast movements and a few other places. And then he's like, Mama, I have to ask he was also on track at that time. He's like, I have to ask the coach because I got to go to podcast movement. I'm like, where's podcast movement? He's like, Philly. I'm like, we got to go to Philly. I'm like, and then we have to be back for the track meet. I'm like, okay, we go, he'd speak, he'd go socialize. I just leave him. Like, you know, you're not going to be overbearing. What are those umbrella or whatever helicopter parents? No, you keep them in a safe place. You know, he was underage, so I stayed in the corner while he did his thing. And then when he was ready to go, like I was more of the chauffeur. But that, I would never say, oh my God, are you okay to go talk on the stage? Like, never put fear.
Sure. Yeah.
And then this started when I was going to a networking event. So like, if you ever have places when things open up, and if you have a place that you could go to, and you find it interesting, take your kid. Yeah. So I was going someplace at times, it was at 42nd Street, the event. And what was it for? Constant Contact at the time had the best events. They had speakers, and then they talked about marketing with email. So I told my sons, and in the summer, I would say, okay, from 9 to 12, you have 3 hours of work. Here's all these books. So if they were in second grade going into third, or third going into fourth, or fourth into fifth, I stopped when they went to middle school because it was just way too like you learn that at school. It was intense. I would get these bridge books. So they would teach what you needed to retain from second grade going into third grade, third into fourth. And I would get one for science and reading comprehension and math. And then I would always ask them to write in a journal, write a story, write about your day, write about your feelings, just write. And I would say, okay, listen, I have to leave the house at 6 a.m. So either you stay home, I'll leave breakfast out for you, and you do your work. I'll be home by the time you're done, by noon. Or you could get up with me and leave the house at 6 a.m. and drive into the city, but you have to wear business attire, your khaki and your collared shirt. You have to wear something because this is an event.
Yeah.
So I said, they're never going to take that up. They're not going to take me up. They're going to stay home. They said, we're coming. Then I'm driving in the city and I go, oh, dear God, do they have to be 18? I mean, clearly, all you have to do is look at them and know they're not.
Yeah.
So we went in and we were late because we hit so much traffic.
Sure.
And now I hate going in places late, right? So I'm like, I'm staying in the back. They walked right in the front. Excuse me, got in there. I was like, oh my God. People had taken pictures of them. They went on stage. I was like, what? Like, let them be. I think we could put the fear into them. Don't.
Yes.
Always, but stand at a distance and make sure they're safe.
Yes. That's so fantastic, man. I want to raise my kids exactly like that, you know. And it's interesting in this world now, though. It's, you know, do we get those events back, right? Like that's still a question in my mind, right?
You will. And I will tell you a negative as parents. I always sat next to them because I always wanted to know who was contacting them.
Yeah, certainly.
And I would say, just because they say they're a man or a female or they're this person doesn't mean they are. And then someone asked my son to do his whole digital marketing. This was my little guy, right? It didn't matter if it was my little guy, my big guy. That's where the mama bear comes out. Yeah. And he says, Mom, he wants me to fly to Dallas and he's going to pay me and I'm going to do all his digital marketing. And I was like, okay, let's wake up here. Yeah. He's going to fly you to Dallas. You don't think there's anybody in Dallas? I'm like, so what's his name? Let's look him up. Right? Yeah. So we look him up. It turns out to be a pedophile.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I was like, he just got out for raping a 12-year-old.
Oh, my God.
Okay? Wow. I was like, no. Yeah. The guy kept calling. He shows up at my Connecticut office looking for my son.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. So then we got the police and detectives involved, and there was the end of him. So what I would say, as good as everything sounds, you let them be, you can never let them go.
Yeah. Right.
Especially, and you teach them along the way. Like, he will never forget that.
Right. Absolutely.
No, that's fantastic. It's fantastic you caught it and stopped it. But I mean, that should be a wake up call to all parents. I mean, that's when we were on Union with Craig Sawyer. I mean, that's the one thing he said is, get in your kid's phone, right? Yeah. Like, these days, your kid's phone, you have to be in there with them because, you don't know who they're talking to.
Don't let them work for Nickelodeon.
Yeah.
Man.
You really have to, you have to show them. You have to show them. Like, I don't care if someone's gay or whatever. I just don't want them coming after someone who doesn't want that.
Right.
Or who's, like there are certain rules and things you have to follow.
Absolutely.
So and that's why I think that you have to also, when they are able to handle it, you'll know. You can see from their facial expression. Taking walks with your kids are so great. Like, oh, what are you thinking? What is this? What is that? Like, it's just great to be around kids, and then always you have to let them go too when they're older, right? But you'll have that foundation forever.
Right. It's so inspiring. Yeah.
Yep.
I love
Beautiful.
it for
Absolutely.
sure.
Beautiful.
I think that, today, I kind of look at our kids is, I feel like we're kind of in a battle that I don't think we're going to win this war, but I think our kids are going to be fighting this for us down. So it's our job to do what we can to prepare them and to also, do what we can to fight against it, to some extent, right? I think that, the most important thing is to take care of ourselves and to work on ourselves. But, our kids are the generation, that's why this thing is such a big deal to me, like the masks, the vaccines and all this stuff, the allowing the government to decide when they inject you with any substance, like why that's such a big deal. Because if we let that one go, even if this one isn't that bad, the next one could be, right? Like, so, but I think, we're preparing the world for our kids, you know, and it's really scary. It's a really scary time.
Well, this war that they've rolled out, the whole COVID, pandemic, that we can talk about it being, whether or not it exists, it doesn't exist, whether or not, we could have done early treatment or not early treatment. And all of these things are valid and good. But I think if we look at the core of all this, when we look at Bill Gates, when we look at, the CFR and the World Health Organization, the NIH, all of these places, this war was directed at our children. And I've said many times that I feel like societally we lost some ground when we allowed collectively for the government to tell us to mask our children and to send them to school in masks. Because, speaking on depression, that's one thing that hits really close to home to me. I lost my mother to suicide. I've struggled with depression. And I know how damning those pharmaceuticals are. After I lost her, I was heavily medicated for a couple of years, and those antidepressants, they will, I think you said numb. They take you away from yourself, and it's so hard. It's such a fight to get out of the fog of that. Once you stop taking them, they hang around for months and months and months, and all that time you're spiraling downhill because they never actually addressed any of the real issue. My mother took her life in my house in the bedroom above where I was sleeping. I found her, right? So my doctor never discussed any of that with me. None of my childhood, none of what was going on, none of how or why I was processing things the way I did. I was saying this is how I felt, and he just kept drugging me, and so back to the the whole issue with the children now. That's the biggest part that we have to protect, because most of us here, we're basically halfway through our lives if we're looking at things fair and equally. It's not us that's the target. We're the arm, not us sitting here, but, society has been the arm used against our kids to make sure that they are, it's like we talk about, you said, and I've said so many times, babies need to see facial expressions. They have to be, that's how they relate to the world around them. That's how they develop empathy. That's how they start to understand after a certain age that the world isn't only about them, and they can start to relate to other people and have, all of these things are so crucial. It's damning to have their faces covered, their parents' faces covered. It's damning to have them not be able to hear each other talk and play through their masks. It's damning to have them breathing the carbon dioxide, all of these things, and keeping them locked away. And, if I want to go even further and talk about, like Bill Gates is all about population control. He's a known eugenicist. Well, if they're not going to if they can't take you out with COVID, then they're going to keep you in your house and have you be so depressed that you take your life. And if not, then more money for Big Pharma because they can prescribe you. And all of this is many fingers off of the same arm of the same oppressive, evil force. And it's all of us sitting here now, and the many like us whose voices are being squashed and whose truths are being buried, who are trying to set the stage and trying to set the tone. And we're like pioneers, because I was raised in, near San Francisco, California. I know about, technology, and I know about, I can open my hood, but I can't put oil in it. Don't ask me to. I can't change my tire. But I think that it's legitimate to consider that if I want my kids to have a functional existence, I at least need to have some sort of a homestead away from a city for them to come to. I need to figure out how to grow our own food. We need to start getting into herbal tinctures, and we need to start learning things that have been withheld from us, because though I can start this path for them, it's them that have to take this torch and they have to run with it, because otherwise they will be masked, injected, surveilled, and they will have no options. They will have no future. And the mask really is just that visual representation of, oh, the virus exists, everyone be afraid. And, if you go into psychology behind fear, it's so damning. And you don't even have to have physical evidence of it in order to control people. And that's a big thing that I try to shield my kids from. When they rolled this whole thing out and they shut the kids, shut the schools down for 2 weeks, I will admit, for about the first maybe 6, 7, maybe 8 days, I was kind of like, all right, guys, we're going to put antibacterial soap on our hands before and after we go in and out of the store. Because it was so bizarre, and I wasn't really all the way red-pilled on what the government had done to us to that point. Like, I knew bits and pieces, and it was really this whole debacle that has brought the Matrix into, full, Technicolor vision for me. But, I think the big thing is to shield them from that fear. And, to find constructively, like, my kids, gymnastics was something they enjoyed. Well, we don't do gymnastics because they'd have to be masked, and I'm not doing that to them. But there are other activities we can do. There are, a lot of, families in the community who have play groups for kids, and people who are looking into, maybe a lot of people who are at the school where my kids went, they're starting, one mom's going to take 5 kids this afternoon, and all these moms know each other. We're going to do science this day and do, real things. And this person's, we're going to go to, whatever, nature conservatory or whatever. We're going to write in our journals, all of these things where it's not, well, I'm not taking them gymnastics on this schedule, and we're not waiting for, 8 p.m. for this show to come on, and we're not just going to soccer after, a 7-hour day in public school. Like, that whole reality is, for me and my family, is over. And I'm not sorry that it's over, but also in the pioneer way, I'm like, okay, well, now I have to really be creative and draw on all of these things. Yes. And luckily, I feel like that we're kind of the last of, our parents all were the last of the what was left of like real wholesomeness in terms of generationally. They weren't corrupted by digital things yet. And our parents are the last generation where that was going to happen. And so we still have some of these ways within us that we can pass down to our kids. And that's where the hope is going to lie. Keeping them safe, like you say, you love them more than anything. You have to give them boundaries and you have to give them structure, but you have to keep them safe from the propaganda. And that is the fear. And that's a huge thing that we strive for.
100%. I mean, even starting a garden with them and showing them from seed and the soil and this and that, and then eating it. That's great.
Yes.
Even doing artwork by finding leaves and, acorns and other things from the garden and have them create something, create a creature. They have such a huge imagination when they're young. I love it. And they could even write comic strips. They could do so much, poems, whatever they want. There's no wrong. And I always say as a parent, we have to be very careful with the words we use. It has to always be empowering. I always think like a piece of wood and a nail. Once you hit that nail, if you pull the nail out, there's a hole. So that's what I think of words when we're talking to anyone, especially to kids. Right. It can't, like I heard someone say there were 2 boys riding in a car. They were 4 and 3. They both had their mask on, and one of the dads says, they're going to be like trouble. Look at their eyes. They're so blue with the mask. They're going to be real trouble. And one kid says, I'm not trouble. And I was like, oh my God, like, you can't manifest that on them. But I get it. Like, I'm just walking by. I'm like, oh, they're so handsome, but you don't want to say that, even, there are trying times. Kids could try you and everything. You just say, okay, you talk with them. Like, I'm not going to raise a snowflake. I'm going to have my kid know. I was from day one. My mother would always say, but does the sentence you give your kids equal what they did? And I'm like, maybe not. Maybe I'm a little stricter, but you know what? So I'm strict. Yeah. And then I would say, why am I mad? Why am I mad? I'm not going to put you in a corner. Why am I mad? Why do you think I'm mad? And even for school, I would always say to them, I don't care what grade you get, as long as at the end of the day, you could look in the mirror and say, you did your best. You tried your best. Yeah. When you were in school, you were in school. When you're home, you're home. You know what I mean? Like, that's just little things like that also could help. So even with this propaganda, you could, say like, oh, why don't we make our bodies stronger and build up our immune system? They never discussed this in COVID.
Right. Yes.
How about, liquor stores are essential. And I was like, don't shoot the messenger here. But liquor lowers your glutathione levels. Men are lower in glutathione to begin with. This is why more boys get affected than girls, but from any vaccine. But liquor lowers your glutathione. Glutathione protects your lungs. I'm like, and they're leaving the stores open. I'm like, it makes no sense whatsoever.
There's no science behind their science.
Yeah.
No, because there isn't science. It's so bad. It's so bad.
It's true. It's true. Wow.
So Nancy, I got just kind of an overall question here for you too. Just one thing, we just had a guest last night, and we went into all of the all of the treatments that they had that they've been suppressed, your hydroxychloroquines and your ivermectins and your budesonides and whatnot. And I think that there's definitely some truth there that, with these treatments, we could have saved a lot of people. The people that didn't die in car wrecks and heart attacks and whatnot, the maybe the real deaths, right?
Right.
So, but we've always stood up more for the natural approach, and I would much rather treat my body right and be proactive about my health and to do things that aren't chemicals to keep me from getting COVID or anything, right? So what would you say to someone that is scared of this virus, but wants to just boost their health and their immunity?
So first, I made sure everyone was on a quality probiotic, right? Because if they have bacteria or fungus or candida, that's a problem.
Sure.
So you go on that quality probiotic. And then I always recommended glutathione, because glutathione is going to protect your lungs. If you can't get glutathione really should be in a spray, because you can't absorb it through capsule or liquids. So another way is N-acetylcysteine, because N-acetylcysteine plus vitamin C creates glutathione. They're both precursors. I love N-acetylcysteine. You feel it. You really feel a benefit when taking it. It's an amino acid. So you definitely want to do one of those, like a combination of the vitamin C and the N-acetylcysteine, or the vitamin C and the glutathione. Another thing, if you take quercetin and bromelain, that helps with inflammation, and that kind of mimics hydrochloroquine without the drug effect.
Sure.
They always say you have to be good with zinc, right? But lots of people can't handle zinc. So you want to make sure, just start with 25 milligrams always after food. Otherwise you get that nauseous feeling, which is horrific. And vitamin D. So many people are low in vitamin D, so much so. If you do take a CBC, a complete blood count, I always ask to check vitamin D. So you could easily take extra vitamin D. So I have a lot of MS individuals who will take even more vitamin D than necessary because their body is so deficient. I wouldn't take anything less than 2,000 unless you were really elevated. During that time, people were taking 5,000. You never want to take too much either, but you definitely want to take that. And then there's great homeopathic remedies, but those would be what people could easily get access to. And then there's something called monolaurin. And monolaurin, so if you don't have diverticulitis, you could take pellets, and that's by lauricidin. If you can't take these little pellets, you can't chew them, you just swallow them. So I have little kids, they just swallow them. They'll put them in anything, coconut yogurt, they'll just go down.
Sure.
Or you could get the capsule. So monolaurin is actually from lauric acid from coconut, and it kills viruses. It actually has research that shows it killed the HIV virus. That I use the lauricidin pellets. So we start slow. If we're doing pellets, we start with 3. We work our way up. They have a little blue scoop in there. Sure. And I always recommend taking it in the morning because it can give you energy. So you don't want to take it at night because sleep is very important. And people were so stressed out. And then for the stress, I love ashwagandha. Some serotonin would be great. You definitely want to, if you're stressed out, look at GABA, L-theanine, things to calm the body, because if you're stressed, it's going to affect your immune system and your sleep and your digestion.
Absolutely.
Vicious cycle.
Big cycle, yeah.
Yep.
For sure.
The whole thing. And hydration. People don't drink enough of pure water, not carbonated water. Yeah. Pure water.
Yeah.
Right.
Certainly.
Yeah, we've heard that one before, definitely. Yeah.
Tim James.
Yep.
And then soup. I love soup. If you make homemade soup and you have the broth, I love making with even ground turkey, putting in bay leaves. Bay leaves are very medicinal. You throw in your oregano. You have you can't have garlic for a child, then skip that one. But bay leaves are also very good. The Italians used to use boiled bay leaves. It's very medicinal. as well. And then Yogi Tea makes throat comfort and breathe. And I made sure that everybody had like 4 boxes of each. And when they got this, I would have them drink at least 3 to 4 cups because it has herbals in it that protect the mucous membranes. So there are liquid herbals. Mullein is really good for the mucous membranes, ears, nose, throat. You could even put it in if a child has an ear infection. And then last but not least is nanoparticle silver.
Okay. Yeah. Wow.
I love silver. And the one from Utah, because it's not collateral silver, it's nanoparticle. So therefore it does not accumulate in your body. Why would I recommend that, especially during this time? It's antimicrobial, antiviral, and it keeps your blood thin. So it stops it from getting that biofilm. And then if you did have COVID, highly recommend a company that makes Enzyme Defense Pro. And that is an enzyme that eats away at the biofilm. So biofilm is created by a protein that viruses and parasites give out. And that's what then causes inflammation. That you take on an empty stomach away from food for an hour. So the Enzyme Defense Pro actually has something for taking away mucus as well as the biofilm. It really is great. So I have all my people who have had COVID on it, even after they feel great. I'm like, keep taking it.
Yeah, that sounds
otherwise
like a great product, regardless.
It's a great product. I take it every day. There's certain things I take every day. I'm going for my Kappa Silver every day. I don't care what's going on. I'm taking my Enzyme Defense Pro every day because I don't want any protein building up in my blood, because that's bad stuff.
Totally.
That's fantastic.
So a combination of any of those. And sometimes, you have to know, you have to be so aware of how you feel that sometimes you could say, I need more of that. But that takes a while to get to that point.
Right.
At the beginning, you just take it and you start to feel good. And then after a while, you feel this, you get to know your body.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well,
what I was going to say too is just like, this may seem like a lot of overwhelming stuff for people. Maybe if people haven't quite embarked on this health journey, it may seem like a lot of information, and maybe hopefully people take the stuff that you mentioned and they go and they look it up for themselves, but for us, and I know it's all about just taking little incremental steps, just doing something new every day for your health. And speaking of that, one of the best ways they can do it is possibly by reading your book, because that's kind of the format of it. Can you tell us maybe a little bit about your book, and then maybe spend some time telling about how they can come find more from you, your website, and anything else you want to talk about, or how people can come support you?
Well, thank you. And yes, it is overwhelming. So this has been a 20+ year journey for me. That's how I could rattle off this, and I've lived every step of it. And I speak actually 4 times a year. I don't know if anybody knows the Diamond Dallas guy. He was a wrestler. So now I'm talking to wrestler people, so I have to and they usually listen to it several times, but I always say, take one step, it's so important for all of us to become our best health advocate. No one will do it for us. No one, no doctor, nothing. Even the information you hear here, you actually have to implement, right? So the book I started writing because my oldest son said to me, I want to know what you know. So when I have a family, and if you're not here, how am I going to ask you? So I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty heavy. So I was like, great. Thanks. So that's when for my clients, I create a spreadsheet and I say, take this at this time, how much, take this for a second, third. So then I created their spreadsheets, one for my husband and my sons. I said, here's your spreadsheet. So God forbid something happened to me, here's everything. So you know what you take, and this is what you take. And then I started keeping, a Word document at the time. And I was just writing everything. And I'm like, you know what? This is really interesting. Someone should know about it. And then I was like, they're going to throw this book at me. If what I noticed, the people who actually took charge of their health. And I've been working with some people, I've had the honor of working with them for almost 20 years right now, and they're still with me. So I was like, those people, the ones that really took it to the finish line and they're there and they're not turning back, it's because we had to reach total wellness of mind and body. So if you just say, hey, don't do this, do this, I don't want you to do that. I want to explain to you the why behind, but I also want you to believe in yourself, because I believe that our brain is wired negatively. There's research that shows this. We think of so many negative thoughts. I don't know why we were wired this way. So we have to constantly throw that out. So like even with the doctors didn't want to talk about what happened with your mom. I mean, too bad they didn't introduce emotional freedom technique where you replace that, you go through it, and then you replace it with all loving things, So I wanted to put that in the book. So one day I'll talk about health, then I'll talk about like, what do you say after these two words, I am? My mom would always say, never say anything bad about yourself. Let other people do it for you. Like you don't say it. So I am strong. I am healthy. So I have all my clients do I ams. After we go through all their test results, I'm like, so what do you want? What do you want? And how do you want to see yourself? Even if you don't see yourself as strong or confident or at peace, but that's what you want to attain to. So that's what the book is. It's a combination of health tidbits and then also boosting one's mental wellness, because we're seeing a lot of mental health and that's affecting your physical health. So it's all about total wellness. And I have a podcast called Total Wellness Empowerment, where I just talk about different things. And then I have my YouTube channel, which is also my name, Nancy Guberti, my website, Nancy Guberti. There's a free email series about glyphosate, to little videos, and then it tells the foods that it's in. I try to do several blogs a month, so there's a lot of free resources. I mean, the whole idea to me, the passion is empowering someone really to reach total wellness and become responsible for themselves. Yeah. That's really it.
I love that. That's
awesome.
So much.
And another thing too, I want to point out too that I love about the book is that it's formatted in like a daily meditation type of thing. It's like for each day of the year, like you just go to the day, and then you just like whatever day it is, you get the book. Okay, let's start here, and then do your long journey, right? You know what I mean? And it's very digestible. No pun intended. Very, very.
It's one page a day.
Yeah, one page a day.
Because you can, you know how many books I have that I read halfway?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, but that was really good. I got to go back to it. Yeah. So it doesn't matter. There's no right or wrong. Like I always want to make, again, there's no right or wrong, non-judgmental, whatever day. And then you could do it again the following year. It may take, I really like that format. I used to read this book, and I still have it by my bedside, and I'll pick it up whenever I want. And it was by Norman Vincent Peale, and it was positive thinking every day. And he wrote it in 1993, and he was a pastor in New York City. By the time I found out he was in New York City, he died. I was like, oh, great. So I bought his book, and I just sent it to my brother. And I was like, you don't know about this book? I mean, but his book is this big. It's like one sentence. And I really designed my book like his book, one page a day.
That's awesome.
That's fantastic.
My next book, though, is Raising Healthy Kids in This Toxic World. It really goes into like 12 chapters of what I've seen for kids, because I think it's really important. Yes. And even offering pre and post protocols, but obviously with disclaimers, because I don't know who's reading it.
Right. Wow.
Well, we're definitely can't wait for
looking forward to that. I know we're salivating now.
That won't be a halfway look. I can guarantee you that for sure. Yeah.
Awesome. Anything else?
Thank you so much for coming on, Nancy. This is such a great conversation.
Very enlightening.
And I mean, it's a struggle to raise kids in this world, but I think. But we're gonna do it because that's what we have to, right? Like we're parents. That's what we do. That is what we've been called to do, and we will do it. And the more good information we have, the better we'll do it. So we should really appreciate you coming and talking with us. And we'd like all our listeners, please go support Nancy.
Yep.
And get this book. I mean, I'm doing my daily. So
there you go.
Yeah.
I might have to shoot you an email or make a phone call and get a couple of those. Some of these supplements and these different things that you mentioned. I want to make sure that I'm getting, a good idea on the proper companies and proper sourcing and things like that. So maybe I could pick your brain just a wee bit, because I know I'm certain the vitamin C I have on my counter at home is not going to live up to the vitamin C I should. And so, I have we have, vitamin D, and my kids know when they get up in the morning, that's part of, but I'm sure that it's not the best way they could be taking it. So I might pick your brain a little bit more in another time.
Most definitely. And, you have to watch the labels, because it'll say free of corn, but it's derived from corn protein. Okay. So the labeling is extremely misleading. And I have a video on YouTube that talks about immune boosting. And I think I show some products, but please, if you have any questions, just reach out to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Nancy, for staying up late too.
Really appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Have a good evening.
Bye-bye. Cheers.
All right.
Green cheers.
Green cheers. Woo, man. Hey, dude, you guys, she was amazing. I had a feeling once in a while I give myself credit. Well, I give myself a lot of credit, but but I give myself credit on some of these guests. Like this one was one that I booked, and I knew the conversation we had, you knew the unwanted, about her raising her kids. I'm like, this is a conversation we need to have. Because this is, in my life, this is the most important thing. Like, here we are, like my kids are, September, my daughter's supposed to go to school. I'm like, what am I doing, man? And like, I have to get proactive, right? Like I'm done talking about it. What am I doing? And this is the kind of person I want to raise kids like she raised kids, right? Like, so, and aware of the world that we're in, and like, so.
What I find to be especially beneficial when parents come on, and in particular when I speak to other females who are parenting kids, and all the matriarchs in my family are gone. I'm the one that's left, and I have a younger sister. And so, I have grown kids. My oldest is about to be 22. But I also have, minor children. My youngest is 9. And though I parented for many years and I've done foster care and all these things, I definitely feel that I don't want to say I've lost touches, but I think some things kind of get blanketed over time. And it's good for me to have other empowered females who are really, really good moms to say things like, well, what you need to do is have them write down, like, I don't care what they write, but write down how they feel. But I'm thinking, man, I did that with my oldest. I just, as she says it, all of these little lights are going off, and I'm thinking, I haven't done that with my younger 3 ever. And, my oldest of my younger 3 is 14. And it's not that we haven't done other things, but there's a lot of little parenting tricks and good advice and things to glean that I'm often and very rarely exposed to. Yeah. If it's not something I remember happening, or it's not, and typically what happens, I just fall into my routine. It's the way that I do it, is how we're going to do it. And I don't really deviate from that. And when I hear another mom talking about how she does it and what she's done and the way that she's done it, it elevates me as a parent. It gives me hope. It gives me light. It's so encouraging to me, because it gives me something that I wouldn't get otherwise. I can't call mom, but hey, mom, this is what's going. You know what I mean? My Grammy's gone. I don't have older sisters. We don't. Sure. And I don't think about that on the day to day until I hear another mom talking, or sometimes when we've talked, and then it's just kind of like my world opens up anew. So this was a really like a blessing interview. I feel like I was so touched to hear what she had to say, and I'm excited to find more. So
that's awesome. Kids need to start a podcast, right?
I know.
I can help them. I can help them.
They both talked about it last night, so you could help them. Yeah, you'd be the man to do it.
Yeah, you got to watch them though, right? You got to watch them.
I would too. Man alive.
I think there's it's yeah. So I'm just, I will say, if you do this for a while, you don't always watch your own episodes or listen to your own stuff, but that's one I will probably reference from time to time for quite some time, just because I feel like there's so much information. Yeah. And when she's rolling through all these different products, I'm like,
I'm going to go back and hit pause.
Where's my notepad? Where's my notepad? But because there's a lot of products that I just think, wow, we should really get on that.
Yeah, 100%. That's what I was thinking the whole time. So when she was saying it, she's pronouncing it, but in my mind, I'm thinking, well, how would I remember to duck.com that later? You know what I mean? That's what I'm thinking.
Presearch.org it. That's the new one. Presearch.org it. We're not DuckDuckGo anymore. It's presearch.org.
Oh, but I didn't get that memo.
On your Brave browser.
That did not come through in our group chat.
Okay. Anyway, leveling up here.
All right.
Okay.
Wait, so is duck.com is compromised?
They don't give you maybe cryptocurrency for searching.
Oh, is that?
Yeah.
Oh,
okay, I got you.
okay.
And yes,
all
I would
coming
say,
around.
partially. It's not as cool as it used to be, I don't think. So.
All right.
Oh,
Yeah.
we're trying to be
It's
cool.
not. It's not the devil
Is that what we're doing?
Chrome
We're
is,
trying to be
though.
cool.
Trying to be
We
cool.
are cool. We're the cool kids.
Oh yeah, we're cool parents, right?
Yeah. Well,
Well,
oh my. Are we wrapping up?
Let's do it.
I think so.
All right. Well, everybody, that was Nancy Guberti. Am I pronouncing that
Guberti,
correct? Guberti. I am Megan. So let me start that shit over.
Okay.
All right, everybody, that was Nancy Guberti. Please go and find her book, go and follow her and get this incredible information from her. We appreciate you sitting in with us. Thank you so much for your time and support. We love all of you. And until next time, I am Megan, sitting here with Scott, Ed, and Tina, and we wish all of you intellectual prosperity. Good night.
Pew 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 pew. Tina, give us a pew.
Tina,
Pew pew pew.
Pew, pew.
Yeah.
Ding.